Yes guys, what's going on? Coach Indy here. Welcome back to another episode of the Premier League Appetiser show. You're on the Asian one-to-one football coaching channel. Click the subscribe button right now. Notifications coming your way. Bish bash bosh. Let's get on with today's session. G'day. On today's episode we will be talking about game week 5 results, looking ahead to game week 6 fixtures, which we'll digest in a little while's time. Also we'll be looking at Indy versus rest of the world. And there's loads of different other news topics that we're discussing as well, in which there's one that's dominating the papers, dominating all the headlines, social media, etc, etc. So we're going to be starting with other news, so we'll get cracking on with that. First thing I want to discuss is there has been 8 COVID positive tests in the latest round of testing in the Premier League. Again, we don't know who's been tested positive or not. We speak about this every episode, guys. It's up to the clubs or the individuals if they want to share that information to the public. Some cases they haven't been shared, some cases they have. So yeah, we don't know. We'll probably might suspect more when team sheets come out the weekend, etc. And go from there. Virgil van Dijk's injury, that's a sort of a big hot topic at the moment, especially on the back end of last week's Merseyside derby, in which that finished 2-2. Obviously the Pickford challenge, horrendous challenge in my opinion. Van Dijk, we don't know the extent of the injury as it stands right now, but it seems like it's an ACL. It could be, I think, a PCL as well, which is obviously worse, which also could be something to do with some sort of breaks as well, potentially with the fibula and tibula as well. So we don't know. They're all just sort of speculation at the moment, but it's all kind of points towards sort of him being out for a large part of the season, and some people even saying possibly into next season as well. But we wish him well in terms of his recovery. Jordan Pickford has, well, his manager's come out and said he feels horrendous, he feels really sad. You know, no footballer goes out with the intention to hurt another footballer. Well, very few do, should I say. There's obviously been 1 or 2 cases in the past that's happened. But in this case, I don't think Pickford has gone out intentionally to hurt him, although I do think it's very, very reckless a challenge. So the Premier League have, all Premier League clubs, have had to submit their Premier League squad for the season. There's been a few admissions from various clubs, and there's been some inclusions as well. So the obvious one that sort of everyone's talking about is Mesut Ozil has not been included in the Arsenal Premier League squad for the 1920 season, or for the 2021 season, should I say. Obviously he's their biggest earner at the moment. He doesn't seem, from the outside looking in, he doesn't seem like he fits Arteta's style, the energetic, the frenetic sort of pace and pressing that needs to be required for his philosophy at the top end of the pitch. So he's not been included. He's come out and given a statement, etc. He feels just devastated in terms of the loyalty side of things, but I would say that's a two-way thing. Moving on, Marcus Rojo has been included in Man United's squad, which has been a bit of a shock. And the reason why it's a bit of a shock is because he wasn't included in the Champions League squad, but he's included in the Premier League squad. Who else? Petr Cech. Petr Cech has been included in the Chelsea squad. So Frank Lampard apparently said that he is in very good nick. He makes sense for him to pick him in the 2021 squad for Chelsea. Reason being because of the situation we're in. You never know what's going to happen with COVID-19. You know, for example, it might be that someone tests positive for COVID-19 and another goalkeeper gets injured. All of a sudden he's had to be chucked on the bench, or worst case he might have to start. So I think it's a smart decision. He's only retired a season ago, so he's not going to be completely out of nick. So that was an interesting one. Who else? Romero and Phil Jones have been excluded from Man United squad. The reason why I said that Rojo was interesting earlier was because Rojo, Romero and Phil Jones were all excluded from the Champions League squad, but only 2 of them have been excluded from the Premier League squad, which I don't know the reason behind that. Seems very, very strange, but nevertheless that's what's happened. What else has happened? Danny Welbeck has joined Brighton on a free transfer. So obviously freebies who are available can sign for Premier League clubs or for any club outside the window because they're free. Nathaniel Klein has joined Palace, again on a freebie. I think that's on a short-term loan. European football has returned, guys, so loads of British clubs involved. Obviously, English clubs we're talking about mainly here, whether it be Champions League or Europa League. And generally speaking, it was pretty positive. We had 3 Champions League wins and 1 draw, and then in Europa League we had 3 wins. So yeah, we had Leicester win, Arsenal win, and Spurs win. So generally speaking, very, very positive for the English clubs. A couple of players that I want to mention that still are free agents at the moment. So you've got Jack Wilshere and Daniel Sturridge. There is many more guys, but I thought I'd mention those 2 because they're sort of the English players, if you like, that have possibly left English clubs in the summer just gone. So those ones, clubs might look at them and take a chance on those. So those deals might happen in the coming weeks, days, etc. So keep an eye on that. So the big news I just want to talk about is, I'm sure everyone's been speaking about it, is the possible proposal of, well, it is a proposal, a European Premier League. So I'm just going to run through a few things, what I've known so far, what's been sort of mentioned in the media on various different broadcasters, etc. So basically it is a new competition targeted for the elite European clubs, which will be funded by Wall Street bank JP Morgan, which is rumoured to be around $6 billion, which is about £4.6 billion. So Manchester United and Liverpool are the two major English clubs that have been involved in negotiations so far. However, there have been 4 other English clubs that have been approached. The obvious 4: Spurs, Chelsea, Man City, and Arsenal as well. There's been more than a dozen clubs that have been included in this. So clubs from England, Spain, France, Germany, and Italy. So you can think of the obvious ones like your Juventus, your PSGs, your Bayerns, your Barças, Real, Atleticos, etc. Competition has been backed by world's governing body FIFA, which is really, really interesting. So FIFA are backing this competition. That leads me nicely to UEFA. UEFA are dead against it because they believe that it's going to be possibly the extinction of the UEFA Champions League. So there's obviously some sort of friction there, if you like, between those 2 bodies. The blueprint kind of looks like there is going to be, the founder club. So if, for example, there's sort of 12 major European clubs, those founder clubs will have sort of a 20-year contract, if you like, so they can't be relegated from the competition. How the competition will be worked, they're looking to bring in 18 teams in total, so it basically leaves another 6 positions available every season for different clubs to join. So what it might be that the first season there might only be 12 clubs involved, and then the following season, right, they say another team from Germany, Italy, Spain, whatever, can join the European Premier League. But depending on how they do in their domestic league will depend on whether they stay in the following season or if they get relegated. And then obviously fresh clubs will come into it, and etc, etc. So there will be excuse me, a relegation format and a promotion format potentially as well. That's what they're looking at. There's going to be, like I said, 18 teams involved potentially. That will mean 34 match days, and then I think we're looking at is possibly having a mini sort of knockout tournament at the end of sort of the 34 match days, which will probably be the top 4 going to 2 semi-finals and a final, and then obviously a winner. At this stage, it won't affect the Premier League, so it doesn't affect like sort of decreasing of games or Premier League clubs not playing certain games, etc., or anything like that. The Premier League will happen as it is, so all 38 games will happen as sort of the Premier League stands at the moment in terms of its format. And the potential start date they're looking at as early as 2022, which is obviously a couple of seasons away. However, there is a conflict because UEFA at the moment, I think their latest contract runs until 2024, so the UEFA Champions League. So therefore there's going to be some sort of overlap period, if you like. So whether this European Premier League can buy out UEFA and say, right, we'll pay you X amount of compensation to cover the costs, etc. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work. Obviously UEFA are going to stand strong in their stance. They're going to want to, they've got the biggest club competition in the world at the moment. Why would they want to give that up? So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. I mean, my personal view on it is, as a Man United fan, I'm not against it. However, I can understand the points of it can affect the so-called smaller clubs, if you like. some people have said, I've heard, and I can understand as well, it's basically the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. I can understand that to a certain extent. However, I'm just excited to see a new competition, to see what it's like. You're going to be playing against big opposition, maybe every week, maybe every other week or something like that throughout the season. So in terms of sort of even a player's point of view, you're playing against elite players every couple of weeks. So, and on top of that, you're playing Premier League games in between as well. So there's going to be games thick and fast, potentially, if this proposal goes ahead. So that's the European Premier League. We'll just move on to game week 5 results. Where are we? Game week 5 results. We are just here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so we kicked off after the international break with the Merseyside derby. Touched on that a little bit earlier. Obviously, Van Dijk had his bad injury, and there was another one as well. Thiago had a bad injury, which Richarlison got sent off for. But that game finished 2-2. Salah scoring for Liverpool, DCL scoring for Everton, so the usual suspects sort of amongst the goals. Quite a good game actually. I thought Liverpool played well, especially in the first sort of 30 minutes or so. And generally speaking, throughout the whole game, looking really at it, looking really sharp. Obviously, the Van Dijk injury affected them probably more mentally than sort of tactically, if you like. Having said that though, DCL did score a goal in the position you could argue that Van Dijk would have been in, and he probably would have cleared. You don't know for definite, but he's most of the time food and drink for Van Dijk in terms of aerial duels won. So that finished 2-2, decent result for both, you could argue, especially for Everton, coming back twice in the game as well. You got Chelsea versus Southampton. This finished 3-3. Chelsea, most of the game, were in cruise control. 2 goals from Werner, put them 2-0 up. Danny Ings' goal just before half time sort of changed the complexion of the game, sort of the momentum of the game, if you like. Gave sort of Southampton a bit more of a foothold into the game, and they played a lot better in the second half. Got it back to 2-2. Chelsea went ahead again 3-2, and then a late goal from Vestergaard from a Theo Walcott assist on his debut. Made it 3-3, and it's just really disappointing result for Chelsea considering the circumstance, being at home, going ahead twice. And obviously from Southampton's point of view, Danny Ings scoring as he always does. It seems like in a way. Che Adams doing well as well, off the mark this season for him. And a really good point, a really spirited result and performance for Southampton and Ralph Hasenhüttl's team. Then moving on to the late game, or the first of the late games on Saturday. That was Manchester City versus Arsenal, Pep versus Arteta, Apprentice versus Governor, if you like. And this finished 1-0 to Manchester City with Sterling scoring the goal. Definitely a lot closer game to the one that we had in the beginning of Project Restart, when that finished 3-0 to Manchester City. Different circumstances, obviously, back then. It's relatively, well, I say relatively new. Arteta had less experience in the role. David Luiz, I think, got sent off as well, gave away a penalty, etc. All these kind of things, so they all play a part. In this game, it was a lot more even. Arsenal had their chances, a fair amount of chances as well. A different day, Aubameyang, Saka, these types of players, Willian, take their chances, and it could be a different game. But it wasn't. Finished 1-0 to Manchester City. I think a result they desperately needed on the back of sort of not picking up a win in the last 2 league games, drawing 1-1 and losing 2-5. Then moving on to the 8 o'clock game, which was Newcastle versus Manchester United. Now, I feared for Manchester United in this one massively, bearing in mind what happened before the international break, losing at home to Spurs. It wasn't a brilliant start for Man United. We obviously conceded in the first minute through an own goal from Luke Shaw. However, Harry Maguire equalised for United with a decent header, and I think he'll get a lot more goals this season for United. It starts for Juan Mata and Daniel James. I think that was an important thing. It starts for Fred and McTominay again. So there's lots of change for Man United's personnel because of previous results. So I think it was the right thing for Solskjaer to do. You need to show loyalty to these other players, the ones that have been working hard behind closed doors, wait for their chance patiently. So 1-1, and then Bruno missed a penalty. I think eventually he does score. Who else scores? Wan-Bissaka scores. And there's another goal as well, possibly Rashford. I think it was Rashford who scored as well. So it actually finished 4-1 to Manchester United. A really, really good result. Just exactly what they needed on the back of what happened, like I said, sort of 2 weeks ago. So that kind of silenced the doubters, if you like, going into sort of their European game, which we'll touch on a little bit later. And moving on to the Sunday game, Sheffield versus Fulham. 2 teams yet to get off the mark in terms of points. Sheffield United only scored 1 goal so far in the league. This actually finished 1-1, so both teams are off the mark in terms of points. I think Mitrovic missed a penalty and then gave away a penalty. Billy Sharp scored the penalty. Fulham actually 1-0 up in this game. So 1-1 for them, both off the mark. So from that point of view, you could say it's a game, they're both sort of unbeaten for a game, if you like, rather than sort of picking up a defeat. They're looking to sort of build some momentum going into the next game. Then you had Palace versus Brighton. This also finished 1-1. Zaha scored a penalty for Crystal Palace, and then a late goal for Brighton. I can't remember this goal scorer. It might have been Trossard or someone like that. But this finished 1-1. Decent point for both, because both teams are sort of playing quite well this season as well. Then you had Spurs versus West Ham, so a London derby. This was an incredible game in so many respects. Firstly, Spurs came out the traps on fire. Like, probably I would argue the first 45 minutes, the best they've played under Jose Mourinho, I would say, in my opinion. And in particular, Harry Kane, he was at the forefront of everything. Key passes, goals, assists, winning aerial duels, combining first time passing, just showing everything that you expect a captain and a leader to do, despite him not being captain for Spurs. Obviously Lloris is, but you know, he's England captain, he deputises for Lloris when he's not playing as well, so he put in a really world class performance. So they were 3-0 up half time, absolutely flying. Didn't really progress so much in the second half. They were in control of the game, but it was just a frantic last 10 minutes. There was Bob Wayner scores a goal from a free kick that I think Cresswell takes. 3-1 with sort of 10 minutes to go. Sanchez scores an own goal with about 5 minutes to go. And then Lanzini scores an absolute worldie, one in a sort of 1,000 strike, where sort of second phase of a wide free kick just lands to him. He sort of cuts across it lovely. And Lloris does get a hand to it, and to be honest with you, he did well to get a hand to it. I've seen some people, mainly Graham Souness, who I think he hasn't got a clue in terms of goalkeeping, criticises the goalkeeper, saying he should be able to save that. I'm thinking, just shut up. But anyway, 3-3, terrific game. Obviously continues the trend of lots of goals in the Premier League. Disappointing for Spurs, and brilliant for West Ham. So then we had Leicester versus Aston Villa. That was a late game on Sunday. So Leicester and Villa both started off really well this season. Villa 100% record, 3 out of 3 before. And this actually finished with a late goal from Ross Barkley from about 25 yards, sort of zing one into the bottom bin. That was sort of really late, and finished 1-0. So Villa 4 out of 4, only a point behind Everton in the league, second in the league, absolutely flying, another clean sheet. Leicester, disappointing, didn't have Jamie Vardy fit, picked up a bit of a calf injury apparently in training. So I don't know how long he's going to be out for, and obviously he's a big component to the way they play, and he scores the majority of their goals. No panic stations in terms of Leicester, I would say. You know, they've started off relatively well despite back-to-back defeats in the league. So yeah, very positive result for Villa, less so for Leicester, but I'm sure they'll have to bounce back. Then we've got a couple of Monday games, the first in which was West Brom versus Burnley, pay-per-view game. This finished 0-0. This is the first 0-0 we've had this season, which is very surprising given the amount of goals we've had. However, you could argue these two teams are teams who are less likely to score multiple goals in games as well. Burnley, especially defensively, are relatively sound. So yeah, both picked up another point. It's Burnley's first point of the season, West Brom second after their 3-3 draw earlier in the season with Chelsea. Then we had, on paper certainly, a very good game, which was Leeds versus Wolves. It's still an okay game. It didn't materialise to the mouth-watering game I expected it to be. But finished 1-0 to Wolves. Jimenez scoring a deflected strike, which sort of crept into the goal, wrong-footed the goalkeeper. And probably in the second half on the balance of play probably deserved, just on the second half display I'll say they probably deserved it. However, maybe overall over the 90 minutes you could argue probably a point would have been fair. There is the results for game week 5, guys. We're just going to move on to game week 6. We'll look at some of the fixtures there. And the first game is actually tonight, which is Aston Villa versus Leeds. So Aston Villa have got a massive incentive to go, and if they can win the game, they can go top of the league, and it might only be brief because Everton might go and win their game later in the weekend. But at least, you know, Brummies, Villa fans can, if they go and win the game, they can enjoy their weekend, knowing full well they'll be top of the league for certainly maybe 24 hours, maybe even 48 hours, depending on when Everton play. And obviously Leeds will be looking to sort of come back and put a performance in, which they have been performing quite well. Just maybe haven't got all the points they might think they might merit. However, there is some bad news for Leeds. They did have pick up an injury with Calvin Phillips. He'll be out for 6 weeks. Obviously, he's quite integral to how they play, both in and out of position. And also Liam Cooper, who's the captain, he went off in the warm-up. Whether he'll be fit or not, we don't know at this stage. So there's sort of two influential figures in that team, in the spine of that team as well, that could be missing. So that's 8 o'clock tonight on pay-per-view. Then we move on to Saturday's games. First in which is West Ham versus Manchester City. This will be a really good game actually. Obviously West Ham are in really strong form at the moment with brilliant comebacks, scoring lots of goals. I think they scored 10 in the last 3 league games. And Manchester City indifferent at the moment, especially in the league. Okay, they won their last game, but it wasn't convincing scoreline. They've got multiple injuries. Will they have players back? Will Aguero be that much more fitter? Will Jesus be back? All these types of players. Will Laporte be back? You know, there's lots of question marks over Manchester City at the moment. But I just think because the pitch is so big, it will suit, especially if Kevin De Bruyne is fit, it will suit the likes of Sterling and De Bruyne to exploit the bigger spaces on a big pitch. So that'll be a very, very good game. And obviously, like I said, City will obviously want to build some momentum from what they sort of did last week in their league win. Fulham versus Crystal Palace is a 3 o'clock game on the Saturday. Now, on paper, this looks like it could be a sort of a dull 0-0 if you like, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is. But I think Fulham, after last week's win and from what and looking to sort of build a momentum, and they have scored. No, they haven't been like sort of goal shy or anything like that. They have scored some goals in the league. I think they will look to. I mean, obviously they're going to look to win every game, but this is a nice game for them to sort of really good opportunity to get 3 points in the game. Obviously Palace are strong defensively. They've got Zaha, they've got Schlupp, they've got AU. These players who can hit them on the counter and could be very, very devastating. So that'll be quite an interesting game to see how that sort of plans out. Then you've got the biggest game certainly on paper, Man United versus Chelsea, the sort of 5:30 game on the Saturday. United obviously had a good win last week. Chelsea, disappointing result. But lots of quality on show. You know, you've got Bruno, you've got Rashford in terms of United, and then Chelsea, they've got a array of talent. Depends who they start with. They've got Pulisic, who's at that one game sort of fitter now. Werner, who got off the mark last week in the league. Ziyech will be that bit fitter as well, came off the bench last week. Mason Mount's in terrific form. Certainly his performances, less so in his goal scoring involvement, if you like. And Chelsea obviously been leaking goals, Man United been leaking goals as well, so everything points to a decent amount of goals in the game, maybe a 2-2 or something like that. So it'll be a very, very good game. Obviously, from a psychological point of view, one team could put damage to the other team's ambitions, because I imagine both teams will be fighting for similar sort of positions in the league. You'd argue Man United need it more because of the start they've made. However, you've got to bear in mind Man United have played one game less in the league. And then the late kick-off, which is 8 o'clock, was Liverpool versus Sheffield, again on box office. Liverpool, obviously missing Van Dijk, can be out for a period of time. I believe they had Matip might be injured as well, so that'll probably mean Gomez and Fabinho playing at centre-halves. Obviously you've got the fullbacks, so they'll be fine. They want to obviously put down a statement to say, right, we can cope without Van Dijk. It's not all about Van Dijk. There is actually some rumours as well that possibly, only an outside chance, Alisson could be back for this game. It's more likely they'd be back for the following weekend. I believe they play West Ham. They've obviously from Sheffield United picked up a point last week. I remember this fixture from last season. Chris Wilder saying after the game that he was really disappointed with his players' performances, because in every other game, or majority of games up until that point, they'd always put in a shift and they always put in a performance. But he always said after the game that we never laid a glove, to quote Chris Wilder, on Liverpool at all throughout the whole game. So that'll be interesting to see how Chris Wilder, whether that's part of his team talk, to say, do you know what, we owe a good performance at Anfield last season. We let ourselves down. We didn't do ourselves justice. Let's go and put a performance, albeit in front of no fans. Moving on to Sunday's games, which is Southampton versus Everton, first game, 2 o'clock game on Sky Sports. Again, guys, I'm not getting paid by any of these companies, these broadcasters. I'm just literally reading it off the screen over here. Everton unbeaten, like I've touched on, top of the league, flying. 2 strikers in really strong form, both domestically and internationally. For England as well, both went on to score goals. I I can see this one being a draw actually, if I'm totally honest. It is played at Southampton. However, said that, there is some injuries in both teams, especially with Everton. They've got James Rodriguez out, Richarlison suspended, so that's two of their front three missing for this game. And I think Armstrong's still missing for Southampton. Whether Theo Walcott continues, I don't know. Redmond's not 100% just yet. He has just come back from an injury, so he's sort of trying to find his form. Be a good game, lots of energy I believe in this game. Wolves versus Newcastle, 4:30 game. Wolves obviously good late sort of win if you like against Leeds away from home. They'll be looking to put back-to-back wins on the board. And obviously Newcastle, they've been indifferent. They've been brilliant one week and then dire another week. And it all depends on if St Maximin plays and his connection with Wilson, and whether it be Joe Linton playing, Fraser, Andy Carroll, whoever it may be. I think that's the key to Newcastle. If they can sort of hit it off in that advanced areas and advanced areas of the pitch, they could be devastating. However, you're playing against a mean defence in Wolves who don't concede many goals, don't concede many chances, and always come better in the second half, generally speaking. Then another mouth-watering game, we've got Arsenal versus Leicester. Both teams have positive results in the Premier League, in the Europa League, in midweek, which we'll touch on just in a moment, guys. Arsenal rested players, so have Leicester, so teams shouldn't have an excuse in terms of energy levels. Leicester and Arsenal both lost their last league games, so they'll both want to put something right in this game. Yeah, I think this will be an end-to-end. I think the key might be if Vardy's fit, because Vardy generally, if he plays against Arsenal, and whether it's home or away, he does really, really well. So that's the key to the game, in my opinion. If Vardy isn't fit, I can see a fairly not comfortable, but a formality in terms of a victory for Arsenal. However, if Vardy is fit, then obviously that proves more difficult for Arsenal to win the game. So yeah, Vardy's the key for me. Moving on to a couple of Monday night games. So we've got Brighton versus West Brom. It's a 5:30 kick-off. Brighton playing, in my opinion, really, really good football, really nice football. Potter's really got them ticking. I felt last season they played very similar in terms of the style they played and the chances they created, but they just didn't take the chances. However, this season they seem to be taking the chances, so a bit more ruthless. Still, there's massive room for improvement in terms of their shots to goals ratio. However, you know, the likes of Mopé, Trossard, they're getting more consistency in their game, whether it be Lallana or Solly March playing as well. That consistency in the advanced areas always does help, guys. So I think Brighton will, you know, continue to sort of perform and do well in this game. West Brom, obviously, they're just looking to build on last week a clean sheet, which was positive, a point, which was another positive for them. Can they go and possibly get another clean sheet and maybe even a win? So that'll be the challenge for Stephen Bridge and his boys. And then the last game on the Monday night, which is Burnley versus Spurs. Obviously, Spurs are in irresistible form at the moment. In terms of goal scoring, should I say, less so in terms of the points. And then Burnley picked up their first point last week, which we touched on, clean sheet. Can they build on that? Home game, they've only played one game at home as well, guys, out of their 4. So again, a little bit of context there for you. You know, you can't just look at the league table and think, oh, they've had a bad start. They've had 3 games away from home, so that's something to sort of bear in mind as well. I think everything leads to me, Harry Kane and so on. If they can put in there something, and if it's a 7 or an 8 out of 10, you expect Spurs to win the game, despite their deficiencies in the defensive areas. So that's sort of game week 6 fixtures, guys. We'll obviously have the predictions of those, which I'll be obviously playing against someone else in Indies versus the rest of the world, which will show you the results of those next week. However, we will rewind back and we'll have a look at game week 5, Indy versus the rest of the world results. So, what I'll say is this week was the first, or the highest scoring weekend in terms of sort of combination score. So the score I scored and the lad who I played against, Adam Stanford, big up. Our combined score together was really, really high. So for myself, I was running through my scores first. So I went for Liverpool to win 2-1 in the Merseyside derby, finished 2-2, so 0. I went for Chelsea to win 3-1, finished 3-3, 0. I went for Man City to beat Arsenal 3-1, so I picked up 2 points there. I went for Man United to beat Newcastle 2-1, picked up another 2 points there. Sheffield United versus Fulham, I predicted a 1-1, it was a 1-1. Palace versus Brighton, again I picked up, I picked up 5 in the last game, which was Sheffield United game. Palace versus Brighton, also predicted 1-1. It finished 1-1. Where else are we? Spurs versus West Ham. I predicted 2-1 in this game to Spurs. I thought it'd be a tight game. Obviously finished 3-3, so 0 points there. Leicester versus Villa. Predicted Leicester a tight win, but 2-1. Obviously this finished 1-0 to Villa, so no points. West Brom versus Burnley. I thought West Brom would nick this 1-0. Finished 0-0, so 0 points again there. And then Leeds versus Wolves was the last game. I predicted a Desmond, a 2-2. Again, another 0. So I have, and for you guys, mathematicians out there who might have worked it out as we've gone along, I finished with 14 points, which is a very, very decent score, I believe. Moving on to Stan's score then. So he was representing the rest of the world. His scores, he predicted a 2-2 result in the Merseyside derby, so bang, he's off to 5 points already. Great start from Stan. He also predicted a 3-1 result for Chelsea, so 0 points there. He also predicted a Manchester City win, a 2-1 win however, so he picks up 2 points only there. So strong start from Stan. Went for a Man United win 2-1 as well, another 2 points. He went for Sheffield United to beat Fulham 2-0. This finished obviously 1-1, so 0 points for him there. He also went for a 1-1 Palace against Brighton, another 5 for him. So he's doing really, really well at the moment. Spurs versus West Ham, we went for a Spurs slightly larger win with a 3-1 win. Obviously finished 3-3, so 0 points. Leicester versus Villa, he went for a Desmond, he went for a 2-2, 0 points there as well. West Brom versus Burnley, he went for a 0-0, guys, it finished 0-0, picks up another 5 points for the rest of the world. Brilliant, brilliant score line and prediction there. And then Leeds versus Wolves, he went for a Leeds 3-2 win. So again, with you guys, mathematicians, if you're working out as you're going along, Stan has picked up a whopping highest score from any individual so far in 19 points, a whopping 19 points. So in this round of fixtures, Stan, who's representing the rest of the world, has scored 19 points. And I scored 14, so he's outdone me by 5 points. You could argue the West Brom 0-0 game picked him for him, sorry. Nevertheless, well done Stan, brilliant result mate, well done. So that brings a cumulative score to Indy 57 and the rest of the world 63, so they've got a 6 point cushion going into game week 7. We'll obviously have another guest on next time round, which we will be predicting for next time round. Last thing I just want to touch on, guys, is the European game. So we touched on them earlier on, obviously. I just want to give you some of the results. So in the Champions League, Chelsea drew 0-0 against Seville. Decent point, if you like. You know, Seville are no mugs. Obviously winning the Europa League last season. United pick up a really, really good win away in Paris, a 2-1 win. Although I would say Paris were no great shakes in my opinion. They played really poor, especially out of possession. That's not to take anything away from Man United result. That's a good, world-class result. Then you had Liverpool away to Ajax, picked up a 1-0 win there. Then you had Manchester City beating Porto 3-1. So those results sort of took place over the course of Tuesday and the Wednesday of this midweek. And then on the Thursday you had Arsenal pick up a 2-1 win away to home against Rennes. You had Spurs win 3-0 against Lask, and Leicester beat Zorya 3-0 as well. So all sort of 7 teams relatively positive, 6 wins and 1 draw. So strong. The reason why I sort of mention that is because obviously you've got to bear in mind some of these results will have effects on the Premier League games either side, because there's no sort of rest in between. There's a Premier League game, Champions League, Premier League, Champions League. It's literally continuous. So there's going to be lots of rotation of squads. There's going to be COVID tests, which means players can't play, which means there's going to be fringe players coming in, which might result to irregular results, which might mean some youngsters play. All these kind of things, they all have a knock-on effect. But guys, that sort of concludes another episode of the Premier League Appetiser Show. Subscribe right now, do it, bang, done. Leave a like, leave a comment as well. Let me know what you think to the European Premier League proposal. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Give me some information as well. Don't just say it's good or no, it's bad. Give me some reasoning behind it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And we'll see everyone on next week's episode.